actually happened last week. If somebody wants to check and see if the recording is working, you can actually log in. I put a live feed link. You see down at the bottom there. If you want to log in, you can see yourself. There we go. Cool. But mostly what I do with this, so this is a Google Hangout. Y'all familiar with Google Hangouts and the Google verse and all the various Google things that you can do? So the thing that's nice about this is this is called a Google Hangout on the air, and technically it's being broadcast to the world, and anybody who wanted to could log in and watch our class. I don't think anyone will do that. I don't have very many. I do it through my Google Plus account, and I have like 100 followers, most of which do not want to listen to this class. But the nice thing is they record it. And one of the things, so we were doing a lot of recording with something called Illuminate, and then they changed the name. Anyway, but the recording quality was so bad. These Google Hangouts on the air, the recording quality is really good. So I tried to record it last week and it didn't work, so we didn't get any recording posted, but hopefully it's good. And usually what I'll do is just share my screen so you get to see whatever's on the screen instead of me. Sorry. More about me. Did anybody log in?
I was just going to.
Okay. You can. You'll be the only one on. So right now I am the only one on and there's no one out there. Let's see. Nah. If you're ever like for some reason can't come in, or if you're sick and you don't want to infect people, then you can log in. I'll try and remember to post a live feed first thing in the morning. So it's a really cool option there. Cool, but mainly I do it for the recording, so then I can post a recording at the end. I think it's the same link. I don't know. Yeah, I'll check it. All right, cool. So somebody has logged in. There's an issue with feedback. So maybe turn your microphone off. Or you can log out, either way. Okay, so we've got a few things we want to do today, and like I said, I want to end a little early so we can talk about some of these action research issues. The first thing, do check your enrollment, because if you're not enrolled by Friday, they charge you lots of fees.
Seriously?
So just do like just a double check to make sure that you're enrolled in this class and you're enrolled in Hare's class as you expect. Probably you are, but every now and then somebody gets dropped and they don't realize it, and then they have to pay lots of fees, which is always a drag. So, what? Cool. Cool. All right. So let's get into talking about Piaget and what his stuff is all about, and then we want to get into our assignment. Which first assignment is going to be to do your own interview. And we'll talk about that. Cool. Now we had two people who were going to sort of lead us off in talking about the readings. Forgotten who those people were. Oh, very cool.
Was everybody supposed to post about it?
Yes, many people have been posting in the last few minutes.
I was just excited. I felt that when we did this and I were doing it, and I saw everybody post, and I was like, oh, all right, that's good.
Yeah, so the way it works is two people get to do a little bigger summary, and then other people just respond to the questions that are on there. Yeah, sorry if I didn't make that clear last week. But it's never too late. If you haven't posted on the board, it's not too late. Go ahead and.
We're not all supposed to post every time?
Yes, everyone's going to post every time.
So if you start off the chain, they respond to there, or is it like back and forth?
You can respond. You can start a new thread, as long as it's in there somewhere. Excellent. And you can respond to other people's responses and all that. Yeah, it's good to have a discussion, but mainly it's good to sort of think through your thoughts about the paper and put them down on the computer. That's the primary thing, right? Cool. All right. So should we talk about water first?
Sure.
Well, how about the first section here, the little intro, couple of pages. What did you take away from that? First of all, what did we talk about the background on Piaget? Who's Piaget? He's the Swiss guy hanging out in about 100 years ago, talking to a bunch of little kids. Cool. And so what's his interest here? Now, of course, we know Piaget, right? You know, he gets talked about all the time for everything education, but he really just cared about science ed, right? He's one of us, right? We get to claim Piaget. So he's interested in what the kids think. Yeah.
Yeah, I like how he actually got me thinking, like, in terms of his asking questions. Like, what if, when we ask kids questions, it's like, okay, what's the long bone in your leg? The kid says femur, and we stop there traditionally because we think the kid understands.
Yeah.
But it got me actually thinking, and this is kind of silly, and I don't know, but if I started teaching the class, like with the lecture portions, in more of a Jeopardy kind of style, because then it forces the kid to ask the question and really get to the basis of explaining, because all he did was say, like, why? Okay, well, in the water rides, why? And then
like a 2-year-old.
But right. He just played dumb. And I think that if you were like, okay, like the femur, and then you start asking kids at this level, because obviously you had the 12 at one range and then 8 at the other.
Right.
And it's just like, hey, like okay, the femur, like tell me everything you know about it, and ask in the form of a question. Then it really forces them to think in a way that they haven't done before, as opposed to us asking the question and then them just giving the answer. And I was really interested in that, because you just basically.
Yeah, he's got these real open-ended questions where there's not like a right answer. I mean, there's a right answer, but the kids don't think that they're supposed to know what the right answer is. They're framed in a way. Cool. I want to get into actually what it says at some point, unless you want to get in before that or hold that thought. Either one.
Well, no, I just remembered that I remember distinctly as a child when they would ask me, like in science when I was growing up, they're just memorizing definitions. And the two definitions that really got me upset were volume and space, actually. I remember being frustrated because I would ask them, what is volume? It takes up space. And I said, well, what's space? And then they could, it's just, I remember just being really frustrated because I had no idea what I was memorizing. I didn't understand. And so this belief that I really thought was very interesting about the volume and spacing is how did the child, how do you conceptualize volume to a child? Like in what realm? And that leap from the 7 to 8-year-old to 9 to 10. How did that happen? It doesn't explain how that happened.
Right.
And I just remember distinctly my having problems with that concept. And
yeah, there's always those things that we remember having this sort of frustration about not understanding, and then at some point we have that aha moment. We say, oh, now I get it. And so part of that is how that happens. But then there's also that, for everybody it's something different probably.
So I do teach like 7 to 8-year-olds and 8 to 9, and so it's interesting. Today we had a discussion about are straws a good tool for measuring, it's interesting. Lots of kids will say yes or no. They have their thoughts, and then we do our investigations. And you would think that after doing this and reading a story about how big is I don't know if you know how big is a foot, and all these things, and you think that they would get like we've talked about it all. The kids are nodding their head, and you still have the kids that say, yeah, I think a straw is a good tool because you can cut it into different sizes or, something like that. And so before this, I'd be really frustrated. I'd be, okay, my God, how much more time do I need to spend on this? But really, some kids are ready to receive that they can make that cognitive leap, and others just quite aren't there yet. So I'm like, well, if you can write down why you think it's a good tool, then, you go for it. I'm okay with it now.
Right, they're nodding their head and they're okay with it. Then you ask them to explain, and it's not at all what you're hoping to get. Cool. Yeah.
I thought it was interesting to note for the younger kids, though, how he mentions it too, but how consistent they are. Like even when he'll ask why, like 3 or 4 times, or restate something that they said that's incorrect, and say, so you're saying because it's heavy, and then you compare heavy and light. and you show them it's different, they'll still give you the same example. I mean, they'll still give you the same answer even after they see it. Like they can see what's happening, but then in their brain they still process it the same way, and their understanding or maybe the vocabulary that they have to describe it hasn't changed.
Yeah.
So it was just interesting, like they didn't seem bothered to repeat the same thing and explain it the same exact way over and over every time you ask.
But that should be good, right? If they're consistently answering the same way. I mean, even though it's wrong, at least they're sort of sticking with their ideas.
Yeah, but then you need the cognitive
Right. So then,
dissonance to
yeah,
change it.
there's that question about how do you then change it, right? All right. Well, let's get into the first chapter here. Jess, is this yours to lead us off? Cool. All right. So let's talk about what was in the level of water.
So basically, the three stages that he had stage 1, 2, and 3, and was asking children if the water level would rise, and then why it rises, and then to whatever they responded, you would ask why again. But just either asking for clarification of what they answered or trying to prompt, not by giving anything away, but like ask questions to potentially move the conversation a little bit deeper, more forward. And then the 7 to 8 year olds believed that pebbles.
So wait. So the scenario is what?
So he has some type of container with water in it. He has a pebble, and then also he has like different objects too. Like he has a piece of wood that's bigger but lighter, or really heavy objects that are small. So he has all these different manipulatives that he can use to show the children or ask them, how can we look at it and then ask, will the water rise more or less, that kind of thing.
Sorry to interrupt. So that's this is what we call a Piagetian task, right? And so there's a number of these sort of tasks that he writes about in his book. And so it's something for the students to do and then explain. And it was funny. My daughter is studying Aesop's fables, right? You know the one about the crow. Yeah. So the crow figures out how to get the water out of a pitcher by dropping pebbles into it. It's the same. And I was just like, wait, that's what I assigned to my students this week. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So Aesop had him beat by a couple centuries.
Yeah, so he had that set up and then would ask them what they thought before doing anything.
Mm-hmm.
They would put the pebble in, okay, why did it rise? And then based on their responses, he could carry the conversation further by showing them other objects that were bigger or smaller or heavier or lighter.
Mm-hmm.
And so the 7 to 8 year olds thought that it was going to rise, most of them anyway, but they thought that the water level changed because the objects were heavy and that they caused a current in the water, more like a wave. Like when you drop it in, it's heavy and it's heavy on the bottom. I mean, as something that came up, it's heavy on the bottom that causes the level to rise. And then the next level, they had, they believed that the level would rise in proportion to the bulk, is the term that they used, but they still described it as weight. Like they might be able to tell, like, okay, if this is bigger, the water level will rise more, but they still described it in terms of being heavy or the weight and the force and that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then finally, the children that were 10 years and older could actually start talking about space, and that the objects take up more space.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe not describing it fully, but understanding that the space makes a difference. The volume makes a difference.
Is that actually a complicated question to answer? What's the right answer? Why does the water rise? Yeah, it displaces it, right? The rock is what? It's got some volume, right? And it's what? It's denser than the water, so therefore it's going to go to the bottom, and so therefore what has to happen? Yeah. So what else is required to know that? What do you got to know? Yeah, there's a lot of stuff to that. It sounds so simple, but that's actually a pretty complicated thing to think about, right? You have to know that the the volume of water doesn't change, right? That's not obvious to kids at all. You have to know that the rock has a certain volume and that the water and the rock can't be in the same place at the same time. Right? I mean, these things, we take these things kind of for granted because that's the way we view the world. But at some point, we didn't know those things. We had to figure them out.
Also, some of the kids thought that if the pebble or the whatever object wasn't touching the bottom of the container, that the water would rise because there wasn't a force on the bottom of the container, which I couldn't figure out like the logic really behind that, like why. I mean, okay, the force, whatever, but it was kind of interesting.
Yeah, why do you think the emphasis on pushing?
Well, they were saying that there was something like, they see ripples of water on top, like waves, air waves, right? So they think that if it hits the bottom, then it sends this like ripple coming up and shooting the water up. So if it never hits the bottom, it's not making that wave and pushing the water. I thought it was like the water was being pushed up with this like wave, like that was releasing water. So, it sounded like they thought there was actually like an increasing amount of water. It wasn't just like space being taken up. It was actually there's more water in the cup now that there's the rock at the bottom. They're talking about these bubbles that were then full of water and increase the water level.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't hit the water at the bottom. It doesn't make that wave. It doesn't make that. Wouldn't that be great? Like there's the drought, just drop some rocks in the bottom.
And they get more water. That'd be so cool. Yeah. Cool. Thought I saw another hand. I mean, those of you who have little kids or have taught little kids are very interested in forces, right? They want to see a cause and an effect, right? So if you drop a pebble and it's the dropping that's causing it, right? But we know that's not really the case. Here's a thought experiment, right? So let's say I have a stack of books. Should have brought some books so we could actually do it, right? And then I take another book and I put it on the bottom. What happens to the level of my books? It got higher, right? And the students would be able to predict that, and they would know that, but they won't connect that to the water thing because they don't think of the water the same way that you think of the stacking of the books. But you can use that to kind of say, hey, look, it's pushing it up, right? Because I put this book on the bottom, therefore the whole thing rises. And that's something called a bridging analogy. So if you take an analogy to something that they do understand, but they don't connect with the thing that you're trying to get them to understand, then you can make the bridge, make the connection for them so that they can think about it in the right way, right? Because they're thinking about it in terms of the waves and the pushing and everything, and they're not thinking about it in terms of displacement. Was there more stuff? What else do we?
That was kind of the summary of it. Let me see.
Are you telling me that a 70-year-old, no matter how much you talk to them, will never understand the volume, will never understand displacement? It's incapable, they are developmentally unable to do that?
So that's a really interesting question, and that, of course, comes from this idea of the using the word stages, right? So Piaget got really sort of known for his stages, right? What are the different stages? There's like concrete, operational, sensory motor, that's like the little infant stage, right? Then you're concrete, operational, and then I always forget the names of these things, right? Yeah, and Piaget got really sort of, a lot of people, that's what they know about him, that he's all about these stages, and he did write about the stages, and then people took what he wrote, and then they said, well, that means that if you're at this age, you shouldn't be doing X. And there were lots of people, lots of professors who made their career in pointing out that, in fact, kids at this age that shouldn't be able to do X actually can do X. And that became a good sort of career path for people to demonstrate this. Because the stages don't really work that way, right? They're not like you can't do this at this age. It's like a lot of kids tend to be saying the same kinds of things at the same age, right? So there seems to be something happening. Now, why do you think there is? Why would kids say the same thing? Why are kids making the same mistakes at the same ages?
Cognitively, that's where they're at, developmentally.
So development, yeah.
Also the way I think that they're probably talked to. I mean, if you're going to try to explain something to a child versus an older kid, if you're in your mind, you're like, well, they're not gonna understand it, let me just explain it very simply, or try to think of a way to explain it that will make sense to them, even if it's not completely accurate. I mean, those descriptions that they hear will probably influence who they feel.
Right, so people explaining things to them. Yeah, Chris?
It's also the way that they talk to each other, because they sort of learn as like their own community. And so if their peers are all talking one way, those ideas circulate through their peer group.
So the talking and the sort of socialization is important, yeah?
What about the idea that most 7, 8-year-olds, they're all being pretty much taught the same thing around the same time? So maybe that's why they all have the same type of process.
Could be, yeah.
Yeah, I think I remember seeing this one documentary about developmental stages of kids in different cultures. Like some kid in Africa who's in rural culture,
Mhm.
they're much more adept in these kind of things as opposed to something else, something more manipulative.
Mhm.
And so I think there's a huge, I mean, this is all European
Mhm.
for middle class. I'm wondering about like African poor kids, maybe they
People who have very different experiences.
Maybe they're very, or fishy community, maybe they have a very, very good idea, the kids have a good idea about volume.
Right.
Because they're in situations in which volume is a part of their lives, well, it's like part of their existence, I don't know, something like that, so.
Akiko, you wanna
On that
follow
note,
on
and
that?
that's
Yeah.
along the lines that I was thinking is, I think I don't know, somewhere in our education, we talked about, like children all across the world at a given age, if you ask them to draw a person, and I saved my own children's drawings from about the same age, they would draw like the head, and then arms that go straight out of the head and legs that go straight down from the head. And I think that's across the board, like culturally around the world. And so it's interesting, I mean, maybe it's a cultural, social thing, but then I kind of think, well, maybe it's really just brain development, because if children across cultures and around the world draw the same thing about the same time,
Mhm.
then it must be something with just.
Something about the way brains develop. Dennis, you mentioned development before.
Yeah, I was gonna say their lexicon is also limited. For example, when he was saying, we were talking about the current of the water, but he was saying wind, the wind causes it,
Mhm.
right? They don't know how to describe it yet. And that's
They don't
why
have the
when they're
vocabulary.
very young, kids learn that's a dog, and they would say all animals, dog outside, and they're pointing at a horse, because they don't know how to say that word yet. But
Right.
they're using something else to represent it. I know, I just don't know how to say it, but I'll call it dog.
Exactly.
I think just in terms of like what you're saying with the cultural and stuff, it seemed like some of those kids were still understanding, like, we're able to predict, like, this thing is gonna sink and this thing's gonna, not flood, I'm sorry, not sink, but like, this will make the water level rise and this one will be more, they just didn't know the word volume, so like what you were saying is, they could accurately predict what was gonna happen, but didn't have the language, so I'm not sure how much cultural there is, and I think, like, an example that I see in my own life of, like, I think it's like brain development. Like I'm reading something that's like, this week your child's gonna start smiling at you, and I'm like, holy cow, she really did start smiling at me. And it's just at certain stages they start to be, oh look here.
Yeah,
he
you can
is.
really
Now
spot
I start
those
shaking
things.
him in front of me, and she starts shaking him in front of her this week. And so it's, I think some of it really is that there are certain levels where you start to become aware of, like, your scope grows and you become more and more aware of bigger things. Like you said, they just don't have the vocabulary to describe that.
It's not just a life experience, you just haven't dealt with as many different things to build a framework in which to interpret events.
You reminded me that I should plug this book. So this is a fascinating book that talks about what babies are doing and how they're figuring stuff out. It's called The Scientist in the Crib. And it was interesting because a lot of people, when they're talking about this, they're talking in terms of what are they learning in school and all that. But how do you really learn about volume in water? Do you learn that in school? How do you learn it? In the bathtub, exactly. You're playing, you're out on the beach or something like that. You have these experiences, and probably kids all have similar types of experiences. They're not going to be the same, but enough similar experiences that they tend to think about things in the same way. And it definitely is developmental. There definitely seems to be this sort of progression from this type of idea to this type of idea to this type of idea. There's some one of the other chapters in Piaget's book. It talks about clouds, and really young kids will talk about the cloud wanting to go across the sky, right? And because that's what they're used to, is that there's objects, and the objects have this sort of plan, and they follow their plan, and that's the kind of those are the kinds of explanations they can come up with because they don't know anything about wind and floating and stuff like that.
Does it go to a certain point? And I definitely like you'll understand the science and like the cool things, and you'll go through babies' it's full experience when they, the voice and the eyes and the hands, and they start like putting things in the mouth, and that's like a fun stage. But you know, at the end of the day, it's like then isn't there a point where that can also be inhibited too? Because there comes a point in time where it's okay, these are my eyes, these are my hands, I know that's a dog, I know that's a horse. And yet, even if you can't describe it, it's like putting a kid in front of a book and then having them play with blocks as opposed to just having the TV babysit them. I think that there comes a point where all kids go through the hand and mouth stage, but then there becomes a point of, okay, you have a blank canvas, what do you put on that? I think that's where you headed. I think if Piaget had a kid and he was talking about water displacement, what age do you teach?
Kindergarten.
Kindergarten? Yeah, so our oldest is 6, and the whole thing is, I mean, if I were to talk about water displacement, he may not get the full concept and maybe do all like on a test, but he gets like, whoa, when I'm in, like, if I were to talk to him about that, he would grab it. But if I were to talk to my sophomores about that, they'd be like, I don't understand the concept of displacement. You know what I mean? Even though they understand
they
verb.
get it, they can do it. Yeah.
So,
There was what was it? There was an interesting study where they're talking about circular motion, right? And there's this misconception on circular motion. So like if you're spinning something around in a circle and then you let go of it, if you ask kids what they will do, they think the thing continues to circle. It just makes sort of bigger circles, right? Which it doesn't, right? A physics teacher knows that it's going to fly straight in whatever direction it goes. But then if you take that same kid and you say, okay, stand where you think this is gonna be, right? They stand where it goes straight, right? So even though they say they think it's going to go in a curve, they stand and ready to catch it in the right position, right? So they do the right thing. They just don't always say it the right way.
So then they know
'Cause they get-
what's gonna happen, but they don't know how to describe it.
Yeah. So they get a little confused with some of the book learning, but they still have that sort of, what's a
That's like
good
a
word for it?
subconscious thing though, right? That's like muscle memory versus like
Mhm.
what they're talking
Yeah, I mean, I would do that with a bowling ball, trace a bowling, like a circle on the ground in my classroom, and then have all of them make a prediction, what direction should you push the bowling ball to make it go in a circle? So they're going towards the edge of the circle, explain exactly what you're gonna do with the broom. Probably about 70% of them say put the broom with the flat side in the circle and push outward. And then you get to one student that can go follow your instructions. Like, oh, can I change that? No, that's what you said. And it's just this whole weird.
Because when it comes to actually doing it with a physical thing, you know what's going to happen. But when you do it on paper, you sometimes say the wrong. I mean, it sounds like what you're seeing with your students, that even though they know what's going to happen, they're having trouble explaining it. They're not able to sort of get the words right a little bit. So, all right, we're covering a lot of different things here. I want to let's get the focus back just a little bit. So the notions of stages that you're mentioning, like Piaget didn't mean for it to get taken the way that it kind of did, whereas you can't do things if you're a certain stage. But he did sort of point out that if you're at this stage here, you're not going to necessarily be able to go to the expert stage. You can't go from figuring out the pebbles making waves in the water to quantum mechanics in one step, right? There needs to be some kind of a progression. It doesn't necessarily mean you can't do X, but you've got to be able to find a path to get there, right? And so that's kind of what we're going to be talking some more about today. What were some of the other things you noticed in this water level thing before we talk about the bicycle? So we mentioned a little bit about how he did his questioning. So what kind of questions were those? What did you take from the types of questions
A
he
lot
asked?
of why,
Mm-hmm.
short,
But
simple.
why? But why?
It's like he's just looking to see if there's misconceptions, looking for patterns. Say, keep saying why, and that's interesting. Say, see if you'll contradict yourself and say, well, I guess that's not the case, or whatever. Just is like, is there a bigger idea at work here?
Do you think it was important that he actually had the water and the pebbles there?
Yeah.
What did that? Why couldn't you just ask the question? Why do you have to have it?
Well, because there were certain occasions where someone would say, oh, well, if you did it with a larger rock, then it would be different. And he'd be like, really? Because I have a larger rock. And so it allowed them to actually test their other predictions.
Right. So you could test it, and so you could see it. So there was less of that confusion about what is this thing we're talking about, you have it right in front of you.
So the descriptive events that he presents to the kids, with a floating piece of wood or whatever. I mean, descriptive events are supposed to make you reevaluate your previous, reevaluate your previous concept and to kind of say, okay, it's not working. But for these kids, they didn't say it's not working, it's just a different explanation.
They modify their explanation a little bit.
Right.
Yeah.
So it was interesting how maybe descriptive events are not very useful. I don't know. I mean, sorry. Because it didn't work. I mean, he kept on asking them, well, why is that? Well, because it's pressing down on the surface, not at the bottom, and so it just it didn't give him a moment of.
There's been a lot of debate over how to describe kids' ideas. Are they like a theory? Does a kid have a theory about how the water level goes up, or are they just sort of making it up an explanation on as they go?
I feel like that second thing is true. I'm reading a lot of life reports this week.
I mean,
My
it does.
kids write these beautiful introductions, or like I call them theory sections. So they look up everything they're gonna do before they do it. They write about it. It makes sense there, and then they do the experiment, and then they're supposed to apply what they wrote about to what physically happened, and they just make up garbage for their discussion sections. I mean, in the beginning, it's the beginning of the year. I haven't talked to them yet, but
Well, that's not
they
even
just make things up.
making a coherent explanation. At least these kids were trying to make something somewhat coherent. Right?
In the reading, sometimes there's I'm sorry,
No, go ahead.
two numbers, I didn't see it. There are two numbers in the parentheses,
Mhm.
like 8-3 on the bottom
Yeah.
corner there. What does that refer to? 8?
Yeah, I'm not sure what the two numbers are. I think it's the age, right? So the Ken is 7,
Right.
and
8 years, 3
so-
months.
oh, that could be. Yeah, that makes good sense.
Why?
I don't know, I just
So,
assumed.
yeah.
I think so.
Oh,
You're closer to the next
Yeah.
level or not, closer to the next city.
Yeah, because this one's 8.5.
I was just gonna mention that, so we've been kind of talking about kids will make things up, but isn't that how we all learn anyways? Because as adults, we're making stuff up too, and our stuff just sounds better because we have right? But so we're teaching them the process of building knowledge, and I think that that's what this type of interview is really good for. And if you have that descriptive event, I still think it's good to have a descriptive event because logic is, we're teaching logic as a skill. We're like coming up with these explanations as a skill set that can be applied later once they have the language. And so if you come back at the end of a descriptive event and you explain, well, this is what we actually think is going on here, then they have that skill set and they have the proper knowledge at the end.
Yeah, I mean, definitely talking and making explanations, that's a difficult one. If the students are just making it up, is it still useful to do?
Because they
What's-
think about
what's-
something and come up
They're
with it.
thinking about it, where do those explanations come from? Those are things in their brain. They may not have thought about it that way before, but they're pulling things out of how they think about the world. And so that you really can find misconceptions that way. Sorry, Gloria, you had your hands up before.
One of the quotes on here on page 179, when it says the discovery of the law of a correct prediction does not begin with the discovery of a correct explanation. And I don't know, when I read that, I just thought
Say that again.
it said,
Taking a while to get there.
it's on the last paragraph in the middle. The discovery of a law of a correct prediction does not entail the discovery of a correct explanation. Yeah, and so when I read that, I'm not sure if I was probably in the right context, but I just feel that there are so many different, we try to explain a lot of scientific theories and we try to make sure that it's a universal explanation, but we as adults are still trying to find the right words and the right ways to explain it, and that's why science is continually ongoing, changing. That's why we're always trying to disprove something, because something that we thought was correct is actually incorrect now. And so maybe something as simple as what we're asking the kids, they're answering it as best they can of the knowledge that they have, even if they see it but you also know a lot of adults who still see something and still go with their own minds.
Yeah, so that's a nice one. I hadn't flagged that one before. That's a really good quote. So just being able to state the correct law is not enough. Right? You have to say it. Yeah.
Because, in Dr. D'Alessio's class, we were watching a video and it was people explaining why there are seasons.
Mm-hmm.
And so even those who could
Is that the Harvard graduation one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then we were also watching like some kids doing it, and it was even though like they could tell you, oh, there's because the Earth is tilted. Students could tell you because the Earth is tilted. But when you probe them further and ask them, okay, well, so why does that make the seasons change? Then all of a sudden they forget that the Earth is tilted and start telling you about how there's certain times where we're closer to the sun, and then when you ask them, well, okay, well, what does that look like? And so they start drawing it for you, and you start to realize that when you ask them, well, what about if it's when the Earth is close to the sun? Well, then isn't everyone closer to the sun when they some are everywhere? And then it's like, well, no. And then they start to draw you these weird maps, and it boils down to, oh, I saw it once in a textbook. And you start to, if you ever like, a lot of times they don't show you the like looking down on the Earth and Moon with it going in a circle. They show you like an egg at an angle, so it looks like this ellipse. And the one girl just started drawing this weird like talking about like the moon and the Earth and the sun catching up to each other. So it had this like weird like curve, that they couldn't quite catch. And so they're trying to explain like this is the seasons, but unless you went and asked them to go further into their explanation, well, if you give them a test question, why are the seasons? And they check, because they're tilt. Unless you make it an open-ended question with like, well, explain what you mean by that, then you don't find out that they actually have no clue why there are seasons.
So that's interesting. So they had two explanations in their head, right? They had the tilt one, and then they had the closer to the sun one, and they know the tilt one's right, but they can't really explain it very well. So then they went with the other one because it's easier to explain. I don't know exactly. I'm just guessing.
But when the person started probing them, like, well, why then would there be seasons on both sides of like everywhere, northern and southern hemispheres? Why would you have the same seasons if the Earth is actually closer than everyone's closer? And once they started doing that, then the kids started to like realize, that doesn't quite work, and so they were able to start, and that's where you like start to change them, actually be able to address some suggestions. But until you stop and figure out like, wait, you don't really understand it, and then ask them a question that gets them to realize my explanation does not work, then they're not ready.
Yeah. That kind of reminds me of that quote we did the first week. Do you remember the one about how idea is like Darwin, survival of the fittest of ideas, right? So you have these two competing ideas, which one's going to win out? And it kind of depends on which questions the teacher asks, right? If you ask the right question, you can kill that idea, at least for the moment. It can come back though. They're never always quite gone like you think. Cool. Well, so all right, I've asked this a bunch of times, and I don't think anyone ever answers it quite the way I want them to. But that's all right. What was Piaget really good at? What's the brilliant thing about Piaget that most people didn't do? And some of you probably already do this because you're brilliant also.
Play stupid.
Kind of. He played stupid. That was part of it. And then what was he interested in? Which answers did he care about?
The response or the follow-up to it. I mean, like he was able to ask questions in a sequence in a logical order without giving any indication that they were right or wrong to begin with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he did. Yeah, poker face, didn't let on, which was the right answer.
Yeah, and then to see if they kind of defend.
So is letting to hopefully the right answer?
He focused on the ones that they were so stuck on their correct answer, and even when he proved them wrong, they were still saying that correct answer, and then he kept on trying to show them how they did them wrong, and they would agree with him, but then still like.
I wouldn't characterize him as trying to prove them wrong.
Well,
I think he wanted to sort of push their ideas to see how far they'd go with it.
I think you want to discover how they thought too, what their thought processes were, because it says something about that they go from a dynamic to a mechanistic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but we were them. We were all them.
Right.
So it's not like they're aliens.
Kind of. I don't know.
It's kind of like, oh, there, guys.
Uh-huh.
I don't know what happened between now and then.
That's interesting. Well, I mean, I think the one thing that Piaget did that nobody had thought to do that much, he really paid attention to the wrong answers, right? I mean, how many times in class, you ask a question, someone gets it wrong, someone gets it wrong, someone gets it right. Hey, great, and then we move on, right? Piaget didn't care about the right answer. He was really interested in the wrong answers because that was what was interesting to him. What were the mistakes that kids were making? It wasn't just that they're confused. They actually were going through this thought process and coming up with these explanations that were related to how their brains were developing. And so he really focused on the mistakes that kids made. And that was how he could figure out what was going on with their heads. And he didn't just sort of throw away those wrong answers as, oh, yeah, that's not important. They messed up, right? Let's get them to the right answer. He paid a lot of attention to that. And I think that's really good. And I bring that up because I want you to do that when you do your interview. I want you to really see what wrong answers kids can give you.
In last semester in Alexio's class, we were also talking a lot about misconceptions.
Mm-hmm.
And just like what went on in my class today bored me. And I think the conclusion was in order to rid a child of misconceptions, you basically have to like sit them down and like, just give him like all the facts and keep going with it until he finally like realized, oh my God, I've been wrong this whole time and have this grand realization. But I mean, I can't imagine doing that, with a kindergarten or a second grader. Is it? I mean, it's at a young age, like there really is. Maybe they're just not ready to receive it, or they just can't process it that way just yet. And hope that by the time they get up to your levels, that they're ready to receive and they realize that they've been wrong.
Right. Well, I mean, hopefully it's not the last science class they ever take, and they will have other chances to get it right.
I don't think I'm supposed to like drill them to death.
No, I
Okay.
don't think so. Cool. All right, let's talk about bicycles. I want to get to the bicycles.
Yeah, I know, like wow.
All right, why can I not scroll this thing? All right, here we go. Cool. All right, so who's telling us about bicycles?
I read.
All right, Dennis.
So essentially, similar to the bottle story, the water story, he wanted to find out how they were thinking. He asked kids at different stages how do bicycles work. At the first stage, when they're 4 and 5, I believe, he actually cut out pieces of cardboard with pictures of parts, bicycle parts, and let them see if they can construct it. And then he asked why, well, how does it go? And I think the kid said, well, you push the pedal or something like that. They weren't able to say how. And then the next stage, they're like 5, 6, the descriptions were a little bit more detailed, but they still don't have the how yet. Mm-hmm. And then later when they get to 8, 7, they were able to draw the bicycle with the top wheels, and they were able to explain accurately how it works. And then after that, older than that, kids were able to explain the how the bicycle works. It's pretty impressive, like knowing the chains and the top wheels and such. I was like, oh yeah, that's right, I remember that. Yeah.
Right. I mean, you don't need to think about how it works to ride it, right?
Right. No.
Definitely, it's not required knowledge. Yeah.
Akika and I were talking about this. She was saying it's amazing how the kids know so much about bicycles, and I was saying I thought maybe it was because of the time that this took place in. This was their mode of transportation. They saw these everywhere. They were in their house, they were on the streets, they were everywhere. It wasn't like asking how an automotive engine works. This was part of their everyday life. They looked at these things. So they probably had a better idea, I would think. Since
Yeah,
they
I
saw
was
them
gonna
so
say
much.
something.
Yeah. No. I mean, definitely, I think biking was a big part of what they were doing. That these kids, but then there's
Oh,
this
that's
little.
right.
Yeah, well, Maria, I was wondering how we came up with that.
Yeah. Of course. What the heck?
He loved to put a time on everything. 2 years behind,
Yeah,
right?
I was thinking about when this was written.
It's not too clear.
Girls would have ridden bicycles too. Right.
I mean, clearly some did, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
We're still
They were wearing skirts.
yeah, that might have been it, right?
But maybe there was
They were
asking.
like Barbie hand, right?
Actually, it's where women aren't allowed to ride bikes.
Mhm.
Right.
Definitely.
Isn't it kind of true that in infant stage that boys actually kind of like look at the movie a lot longer? Like I read that.
That is a controversial topic. So there's a lot of literature about gender differences, and for the most part, most of the gender differences tend to sort of wash away under really close scrutiny, and that there's not a lot of differences. But one that kind of sticks more is this. I'm trying to remember what the right word is. Yeah, spatial reasoning and spatial predictions like that. My advisor in grad school actually had done some work on this and found that if you did a small amount of training, that most of the girls, I think we were working with college undergrads, with a small amount of training, most of the women would get up to equal with the men. And so they were hypothesizing that it was less time playing sports or less time riding bikes, but I mean, nobody really knows. But do they stare at the mobile? I haven't heard that particular one.
Well, it just sounded like
but-
we say that there seems to be a predisposition for little boys being very captivated by moving objects much more than girls. I've heard that.
Yeah, I don't know that one, but possibly they do a lot of studies with little kids and try to see what they're interested in. They have this really funny methodology where you get like a 6-month-old or something like that, and you show them something, and you show them the same thing until they get bored of it, and then you change one small thing about it and see if they get interested again. Like, do they notice that there was a difference? And so it's all about what is the kid looking at? Are they staring at this thing? And one of the things that they found that infants would really get fascinated by is if they had this little setup where they showed like blocks stacked up, right? And then they took away the bottom block, and that would freak the kids out, right? Because it's like, that's not the way blocks work. They fall down if there's no bottom block. I mean, the kids know. And so so even though they can't even speak or say anything, they think that kids can understand the idea of supporting and that things would fall down. It's that kind of stuff, eye tracking, and one of the variables that they look at is sucking frequency. Yeah, so they have a little sensor in the binky, and they can measure out. I don't know. It's a really funny. Maybe I'll put some of those papers on so we can look at some of that. It's a fun stuff to read. I'm always a little skeptical of it, but it's interesting to see. Cool. I thought there was some other hands. More stuff about bicycles. Yeah.
Well, I think it's interesting because is Mark here about it? Like, it's not like she's talking about one of the things is getting more girls involved in STEM. I think it's interesting because I think my cousin's like a professor over at UCR. This whole she hates gender. Like, they're gonna have a kid, and she doesn't want to put the girl in pink or the boy in blue because you're just you're so.
Good luck with that.
Yeah, just doing so more of like a green or like more of a neutral color, I guess. But at the end of the day, it's the whole concept of it's really crazy. Why do girls like to play with dolls? It's like, well, that's the model that we've done. If we were to like we play with Legos, I read a study that if our girls play with Legos, then it's makes them better at something, right? Some study said something. So we all play with Legos. We make all three of them it's Lego time. It's like we're gonna build because instead of going and put on the little Disney heels and go to work and stuff, it's just something that they see because they see what mommy does, they see what daddy does. But if you were to say, okay, free play, what we found is not that we're studying this aggressively, but it's free play doesn't always mean girls in Disney heels and then boy goes to Legos, but then sometimes they'll do Legos, and honestly, sometimes they'll go put heels on play with the girls just to be silly. Mm-hmm. So it's the whole thing is when you let a kid be a kid, you don't say no. I mean, it's you can imagine my distraughtness when I saw him walk around on heels at first. I was like, how do we handle this? He's fine now, but the whole thing is have fun, so it's interesting. So it's not to, because there's going to come a point in time where it's there's the public perception, I'm not more easy to walk around heels on that. Right. But it's the thing is, the same reason people freak out if you're being heels, the same reason people freak out if girls are with Legos. It's they need to be able to have that.
I don't think girls
Yeah.
You guys want girls play with Legos? You
I
guys
played with Legos.
I wouldn't freak out if
Yeah, exactly, like you would freak out, so then like,
But
you know,
why are you freaking out?
I'm not, no, that's what I'm saying. Everyone started freaking out when their thing was in heels, it's like, yeah, what's wrong with you guys? You know, like, so, you know what I mean? So I think that there's certain people that freak out and don't let that happen. You know, and that's the problem. It's like it's a fantasy big oven where it's like so now like so there's the boys.
Have you seen the pink Legos that they have now? You can get pink
Yeah,
Legos.
I have.
Hey, our eldest, he had a big piece of big oven. We also have a kitchen, like our kitchen.
That's the thing. It's the norms. Like you have to say, okay, like, go for it. Get girls for my bikes. You know,
You can keep the norms until they discover Disney, and then all bets are off.
She doesn't know, you don't understand.
Get out with Brian.
No. What am I missing?
She just sang Disney song. No, it said then you have to
Let it go. Oh, I should know this. Come on, I have girls.
Honestly, all children know the words.
It was on the radio,
You got kids, right?
Yeah,
So boy, girl.
2 girls.
Okay, so then you're scientists. Do you have, when did you expose them to science and experiments?
Well, I mean, they went to a preschool from a very young age, and the preschool is all gender neutral. Everybody can play with everything and stuff. But you know, the cultural norms just sink in. Pretty soon, they're Sleeping Beauty and Beauty and the Beast and everything like that. There's nothing you can do about it.
Do you push science on them? Like, not, when I say push science, like, do you like?
Yeah. At some point, I have a teenager now, and I can't push anything at her. That doesn't work anymore. 13 and 10.
Oh, wow.
So. No, they're both good. We went to back to school night last night, and my 13-year-old's in 8th grade science, which is what I used to teach, and so it's like, wow, this happened to happen sooner or later, right? So now she's there. She's those kids that used to torment me all the time. She's one of them.
Oh, my goodness.
Cool.
It's the worst.
I loved 8th grade. It's a very acquired taste, So you either love it or you hate it, right? So yeah. Okay, let's get back on track a little bit here. So Dennis, I'm going to turn this back to you a little bit. So what's with these drawings? The drawings are kind of an important part of this.
Yeah, so they weren't able to. The younger ones weren't able to put the cogwheels. They didn't mention that part of them, not accurate, but they weren't able to. They didn't know what they do. They just, but as they get older, they know where to place them, and they were able to connect the chain, the cogwheel, the pedals.
No, but this was part of the interview, was have them draw the picture of the bicycle and show parts and how it works. And this is a pretty good one here, right? What's the key, of course?
No back between the table and the seat where you're sitting, the table where you're sitting, and the back wheel.
Right.
It's sturdy for you to be supported on.
Yeah, a few missing pieces there, but what's crucial here? Yeah, the pedals are wrong. Yeah, definitely.
I figured they were.
But there's a chain that's connected to the pedals, that's connected to the cogwheel.
Yeah, they got the chain. The chain is the core of how the bicycle moves, right?
I don't know, draw changes in the message drawing. I can't remember.
Yeah, it's one of the things. So we have these other drawings. Let's look at the.
That's manual. That's a
Where's-
good bicycle drawing.
So here's the. So here's the very young kids, right?
After the accident.
I mean, they didn't draw a seat, but that's pretty much the main things you need, right? Handlebar, seat, pedal.
Is that what it is?
That's what you need on a bike, right? Maybe you're aware of there being wheels, right? But the chain doesn't seem all that crucial, right? You know what you need to do, right? But unless you've really thought about the mechanism, right, and how it works, you're not going to really pay attention to the chain. And clearly, the kids at this age, they're not thinking about a mechanism. They're not thinking about the bicycle as a machine. They're thinking of it, hey, it's a thing you do, right? Cool. And then what happens when they get older? You were talking about this already.
to connect how they were explain chain is connected to the cogwheels.
Mm-hmm.
When you push the pedals, it turns the chain and wheels
Mm-hmm.
and you move forward. So they're able to explain how it works, the mechanism.
All right. So then they got this one here. What do you think about that?
I think they were
Sounds
artistically
good.
challenged.
Yeah.
Draw.
At least at the chain.
Do you think the drawing is a good part of this interview?
Yeah, unless you kind of know where they are.
It explains what they know.
Both the drawing and the dropping the stones in the water do one really important thing in terms of the interview. The one thing you don't want to have happen in an interview, and this is especially true of you because you're teachers and you're probably going to interview your students or your friends or something, you don't want there to be a right answer, right? You don't want the kids to be thinking of, oh, I know this one. What is it? You don't want that. You don't want that at all. You want them to just be brainstorming and imagining and trying to figure stuff out, right? So having a task makes it. This is definitely not a school test, right? I'm dropping stones. I never do that on a school test. That wouldn't happen, right? Or I'm drawing a picture of a bicycle. That's not like a test kind of a thing to do. So that sort of loosens the kids up, lets them sort of feel free to answer honestly and kind of give their thoughts without worrying about whether they're right or wrong, right? Because it doesn't seem like the kind of question where there's a right or wrong, right? And so this is an important part of the interview. You gotta get the kids to get away from that school mindset of what's the right answer and start telling you what they really think, right? So you gotta come up with something. You can't just start with questions. You want to come up with something that kind of gets that message across. And this is a different kind of a thing. Did people give any thought to what you might interview about? Now, one obvious thing is whatever your project is. So you could do something related to your action research project. So if there's some kind of interview related to that, but you want it to be something that has some science content into it, so you can kind of get at kids' thinking and kids' reasoning. Yeah. All right. Good segue. All right. Other things about bicycles before we get into the interview assignment.
That Saudi Arabia still doesn't let women ride bicycles.
Really?
It's for recreation. You're accompanied by a male, and it's only in a park.
My husband was telling me about the bathing costumes for women.
Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I mean, it's a different part of the
No,
world.
apparently it goes from like here down to just below their ankles. And it's in swimsuit material, but it's not like close fitting or anything. It's very loose fitting, but swimsuit material. And it goes like to here on their arms. And they cover their heads.
Of course.
And yeah.
It's like a space out there.
Yeah, yeah. What would happen if they went to Europe and they saw women wearing, like French bikinis or anything?
Did they see American films and must think like more crazy to wear so little, right? If they see Hollywood films.
Probably think.
May not be allowed to watch.
I don't know.
I don't know.
There was some kind of controversy about like women in the Olympics and what they were allowed to wear, like the swimming team.
Well, yeah, they actually do compete in some of their clothing. They do have athletic clothing.
Right.
I've seen it before, but yeah, it's like basically a hoodie and all this other stuff. They're basically dressed up. And it's like the Summer Olympics and Britain was like hot. And it was like 100 meters or something. I'm like, how can they be running in that? Because the rest of them were wearing like shorts and everything.
Right.
So did
Like
they
the
make
one
them?
runner from Saudi Arabia was just all dressed up.
But did they make them do it? They competed like that?
They competed like that, yeah.
Well, I mean, they allowed them to. I mean, it was sort of
Well, no, I think their
non-standard
countries
uniforms.
make them do it.
Yeah. Right.
The Olympics doesn't care.
Or they allow them to compete, that's
Yeah, that's good. I like.
before they ever allowed them.
All right. So I put a link. I've got to mess with this. I didn't notice this older module thing, or I got to update my my version of Moodle. Anyway, so there's a link right here to the interview assignment, and the assignment's not going to change. I'll get rid of that. The assignment is that I want you to basically conduct an interview. I want you to transcribe it, and then see what you figured out. So analyze it. And so this is an example of a research methodology. You didn't get to do it last semester, so you're getting to do it this semester. And it's, and it's relevant to what we're looking at in terms of misconceptions and how kids think and how we can help them sort of evolve their views. So the idea here is that you're going to basically do the same interview twice. So Piaget would interview dozens of kids with the same interview and the compare notes. We're just, we don't have that much time. So we'll just do the same interview twice with 2 kids, or it could be adults. It's pretty much up to you who you want to interview. I'm open-minded. Whoever is easy to interview. It's really just about learning the process and sort of seeing what information you get. If you want to interview your people in your family, if you want to interview neighbors, if you want to interview students in your class, whatever works. I do want you to record it. So audio recording. I don't think we need video. You can video if you want. But primarily you want an audio recording, and then we're going to need to transcribe the text of the questions. Now, when I say transcribe, and we'll talk about this more again next week when we look at a sample, we're only going to transcribe the key parts of the interview. We're not going to have to transcribe everything. Mark, did you do this already?
Yes.
I thought you did. Yeah, what did you do in your interview?
I interviewed a couple science students about things that I thought they might have misconceptions about.
Mhm.
I interviewed an AP student and a non-AP student.
Okay, cool.
What did you ask him?
Do you remember the subject? I should remember. I think I read it.
It was something, it wasn't the seasons, but it was kind of Earth science related.
Cool. Yeah. So I mean, the topic is again up to you, but you want it to be something where there's some sort of reasoning, some sort of insight into thinking. Yeah.
Just FYI, 23rd is when Professor Harris on.
Yeah. We're gonna turn it in online. So yeah, we can turn it in from home. So we're not gonna have class that day. The 23rd.
September 23rd?
Yep. I was gonna get to that part as well too.
So I
What's that?
do all these segues for
You're asking the perfect question. So a couple of questions. I see some hands. Yep.
Do the people you interview have to say,
No. I mean, it's easier to compare if they're similar, but then maybe there'd be an interesting contrast if they're different ages. So however it works. Yeah.
So for the methodology, is this prepping us kind of to prepare on how to do an interview? Or is this like, I guess I'm confused with like the methodology, the purpose behind it. Is it how to conduct an interview? Is that what this is trying to get us to do?
Yeah, so using interview as a data collection technique, and if this ends up being something that's useful for your action research, you can by all means use it for that. If the data works out, you can get double duty with it.
Okay, so I was just gonna say, so to meet the requirements, it's 2, but like for example, when I take on competition, so I want to talk to an equal amount of student athletes and just students to get their views on competition, use that as the comparison of data. So when you ask, like, for instance, a student about competition, most people don't find competition in the classroom as a necessity. You talk to a student athlete, and then it's a different story. So, could a question like, do you classify yourself as a student athlete? Could that be a question?
Sure. Yeah, totally. So one of the things we'll do is we'll create something we call a protocol. Basically, it's a list of questions, right? And not that many questions. We want to keep this fairly short. If you've got more than 10 questions, you probably got too much. What you want to do is you want to think through some of the questions and then kind of anticipate what students might say, and think of some good follow-ups. Like, Piaget, he's got all these great follow-ups. Like, well, but how does that work? Or what if you have this thing that floats? So he's kind of course, he's done the same interview lots of times, so he knows what kids are going to say. So we're going to try and imagine what kids are going to say, and so think through what are some ways they might try to weasel out of answering the question, and how can you get them back online, that kind of thing. So in your protocol, sometimes we write questions and then some potential follow-ups. Jess?
So what Brent's talking about, asking like for their opinion of something or their position on something, is very different than having them explain a misconception or a particular like science concept.
Mm-hmm.
Either is okay.
Yeah, I definitely any misconception concept is okay. In terms of the opinion thing, I might need to check it out just to make sure.
My second question was then what kind of follow-up questions would you have? Because if it's mostly opinion, then, I mean, you could ask them why, or, you know, why do you feel that way, or what experiences have made you feel this way, or led you to be an athlete or not an athlete, or like competition or not like competition. But I think, because I was thinking my action research is on student discussion, so it's not like a, you know, particular concept that I want to see if they understand it.
Well, I mean, so for both of those, you might want to find out, you know, what's the value of competition? What's the value of discussion? You know, does the student see some potential for it, some value, or is it just, you know, it's a waste of time? Kind of, you know.
But there's different tools for getting like the yes, no, or typing up like a survey. So if you're saying, do you think competition's a good thing? And all you want is a yes, no, like you get a survey, but this is more like the open-ended where you have the opportunity to follow up.
Right, so that's kind of my question. So if I ask students, like, do you think discussion is valuable?
Mm-hmm.
And they say yes, I could say why.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you just keep asking why, and they give you a reason. Well, why is that valuable? What does that help you with? Like, I don't know if that.
So one of the, you know, we talked about having like a task or an activity or something. So one of them is you could present a scenario. So, you know, there's a student in class and they're having discussion, but the kids are off task all the time, and so they're never actually learning anything. You know, what does that tell you about discussion? Or, I mean, I don't know if that's a good example or not, but
Show them a video.
But show them a video, present a scenario. What do you think of this scenario? That kind of a thing. You want to have some sort of what's your key question? What do you want to know about these kids? What kind of ideas are you looking to get from them? Yeah.
If we do this with our students, if we already have for the action research and consent, and then can we use that same consent form?
Yeah. So I hadn't talked about the consent, right? But we do want to have consent for this as well. If you mention recording in your consent, then I think you're good to go. If not, then make a little variation on that and send that one home. I mean, remember, it's only 2 students, so you can totally sign up a family member. You can sign it yourself. You still got to sign it.
Oh. So.
Yeah.
Jess was talking about discussion
Mm-hmm.
in her interview. So it's not about, you don't want misconceptions because.
I see. In my mind, those are kind of the same thing. So it's just conceptions about something different. It's not about science, but it's something about school. So how do they think school works? What's their conception of how to learn something? You know, so or how to get the best thing. So does that kind of make sense?
It does. I was just kind of curious too, like about the, you know, I don't have a pebble to give them, but
Right.
I guess showing them how to read a scenario or something.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Does that make sense? Okay. We can talk about this more. We've got a few weeks to work on this.
Allison and I were talking about, I guess, the action research project, and we're a little concerned about the timeline of things. And when we met with Dr. Rivas
In the summer?
as groups, I heard in a different group, she heard the same thing, that we're supposed to probably be done with all of our data collection before Thanksgiving.
Yeah, because with mine, there's no possible way. I'm still trying to get permission from my school.
But, so on that note, like right now we're talking about interviews, we're doing this practice, and this is great, so I can use this, what I've learned, to apply it to my own, but I'm kind of trying to figure out, is that really a realistic timeline that, you know, we're learning about it, we'll be comprising our own and then doing it with our students, and still somehow get all this data before we expect to have.
Well, we don't need to interview it for RSA. We don't need to use it.
For your action research? No, it's not a requirement that people interview for their action research.
But like, for
There's-
example, I do have interviews in mind, and so I'm wondering if I'm gonna have enough know-how to do everything that I thought I would like to do.
The timeline is very short. I totally see that, and not everyone will be done by Thanksgiving. I think that's true. Just you lose more of your time for analyzing the data and writing up your paper. That's all that's supposed to happen in the spring, but if you're still collecting data, then you can just limit it on how much you can, how far you can go. I mean, we don't actually get to writing up chapter 4 until like February, mid-February, or something like that. So if you have all your data collected by the beginning of February and you have a couple weeks to do the analysis always takes longer than you think. Like, you will spend longer transcribing and writing about your interviews than it takes you to actually do the interview, right? So, yeah. So you want to make sure you have some time. So we do what we can, right? That's always what we do as teachers. We get it done as best we can. But yeah, if there's something I could do to help your timeline, do let me know. Things like that.
Did you mention your office hours on your website?
So I have office hours before class, but by appointment, just let me know. Happy to come in. I'm here most days and can definitely do a Google Hangout or talk on the phone, that kind of stuff. You're really excited about me talking on the phone, right?
I was trying to go to the webpage. It works.
Okay, good. I figured it was a baseball game or something, but you never know.
I get some frustration because I can't log on to the website right now.
Oh, that's no good. And it won't send you your password or anything?
No.
Oh, all right. I can fix that after class. We'll do that. Okay. Interview protocol, transcripts, summary. Like I said, we've got some samples we'll look at next week, and the informed consent documents with students' names blacked out, because if you're turning it in, you don't want to have any names on it. Cool. All right. So we will. Let's see. Oh, we're not gonna have time for all this, are we? So let's talk a little bit. Let's. Should we stretch out a little bit? A little stretch. Yeah. Yes. Let's take a couple minutes, and then we'll talk about the website, the NGSS. Yeah.
Stiff. I didn't realize it was stiff.
Yeah.
Essentially, I mean, like, it's flooding. Where's my garden? It was, yeah, it was scary. There was like lightning in like in front of my classroom. Like, they told us to keep the children inside.
It's very ominous.
Yeah, so I just wanted to apologize. It won't happen again.
You're apologizing for the weather.
I'm apologizing for coming
For
in
the
late
lateness.
because I was afraid to go outside. This is yours.
That
And then we have
seems
For
like a
dinner. It's coming
reasonable
soon.
thing.
Yeah, it was scary. So anyways.
I definitely don't want anyone to be killed trying to get to class on time.
Okay, all right.
Seriously, there's like a flash flood happening up in the eyes.
Yeah, what is up with that?
Clouds, and then look at the Doppler, and it was just like insane.
It was very scary. It was right on top of Santa Cruz.
And was it like 100 degrees and
It was really
thunderstorm?
hot, and then all of a sudden, it was just like water and like thunder and lightning, and I was like, I was in the conference room, so like, these are gonna get wet.
Yeah, I was looking at the clouds above the mountain, you could just see them like just visually just going up. It was like,
It was really intense, but it only lasted for like 15, 20 minutes, but there was a lot of water.
Wow.
So I was like, I don't know.
Is that what we're in for with El Nino or something?
I hope so. I mean, we need some water. We're really into fishing with the lakes.
Better if it comes at a better pace than that, maybe? Exactly. Cool. Mark, which is your account that you're trying to get onto? What's that?
Rebus used to have us do, like, go to conferences or a PD of some kind.
Yeah. There's not really great conferences coming up, right? When's that STA? CSTA?
This month. No, next month.
All right.
I can get money from the union.
Yeah, we don't have that assignment. It's always a good thing to do, but we're busy doing other things right now. So, all right, so which one are you trying to get onto?
So I go here, and I go, oh yeah, cool, 690. Right, so I click on it, it says now log in. Well, I know this one, right? But that is different then my portal.
Okay, now you know this is not connected to the portal in any way, shape, or form.
I had everything being the same.
So which one was it? Is it there is not an account. Oh, that's that user's full name. So let's see. You go with Mark?
Yeah, Mark or Martin.
Oh my god, is there thunderstorms, lightning, hail?
It's a weird search thing. Let's see here.
It started raining right now. It was
Mark, you were not in as Mark. So maybe Mark?
Martin, yeah.
Stop the water for that. And then there would like flashes, lightning, and action, spark the fire. The whole was so hot.
Is that the fire outside?
Not today.
There we are. This one?
Yep.
All right. 91175?
Yeah.
Okay. So let's reset your password here. All right. So the password, let's say hello. All right.
Okay.
Got it? Oh,
Hello.
it helps if I type it,
Hello.
right? There you go. All right. So then you can change it to whatever you want.
Is there a change? H-E.
Yeah, you go to your profile. Okay, you're good to go. Now, if you want to change your password, you just go up to where your name is. Yeah, exactly.
My profile, view profile. Is it view profile?
And then edit.
Oh, edit profile. Change password.
Either an administrator or.
Tool.
Because he had written this out really quick and had started following the instructions, so he and he was very upset about this, because he did not feel he should have had D. And he was very, very upset. So I basically went home, I said, I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to leave now. And, they started more, I said, if you don't leave, I'm gonna have to leave. And we have to lock him up, so I walked him, he was trailing behind me, that's what he did, the whole way, like, I was very hard. It was lovely. And I was Well, Yes, we were in the.
Must be nice. Well, then that one actually has like all of these, so drop a couple of it, that might change. So that
I'll tell her to.
I just understand this, though, that it's, we'll have to get like half and half to kids and make sure it's okay. And no one's ever cared before.
Yeah, that's weird.
So basically with my project, I'm gonna wait till what happens, and if I have to go, you know, I may have to ask somebody here if I can use their phone.
Is there anything I could do? Could I play the professor card every now and then? That's a useful thing to do. And say, oh, we really need to let this happen so she can get her degree.
Oh, well, I don't know if that would help. I think they would be very irritated.
That can happen. Yeah, well, let me know if there's something I can do.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's see what happens.
I'm happy
If
to.
not,
I'm
I'll
happy to
just-
make a phone call. And,
Yeah, if not, I'll just ask somebody to listen to the computer, so let me do their class, and if not, I'll try to get a job as a teacher and do it next year, I guess. Oh,
yeah, that's no fun.
I know it is.
Is it like an after-school class or something you could try? Or something? I wonder.
The only
In
thing
the
I can
summer, you could do it here. We have a bunch of science classes here. Middle school. Okay, let's get back to it.
It's last time you go.
Yeah, especially we mentioned that there was a couple of changes to the syllabus. One of which is that here we are in week 3. So next week we'll be here. Professor Pack's going to come visit and tell us all about graduation. That will be informative. We care about graduation, right?
Yes.
You want to do that thing?
Yeah.
Yes, good. So she will be here next week. Very good. And then the week after, since Professor Hare is not around, excellent. And so we will not have class that night either. Instead, we will have this assignment. And I was looking at it and going, oh yeah, we did this as a take-home assignment last time too. So that works just fine. I didn't even need to hardly edit anything. So what we're going to do is we're going to explore some computer simulations. I don't want to talk about that today though, because that's further along like that. Then we're going to play around with Scratch. Scratch is a lot of fun. Those of you who don't or haven't had me impose it on them previously. And then let's see. We'll finish up with this book. Has anyone ever seen this book? Does anybody know this book? It didn't get very widely covered. So Rosalind Driver is it's a really well-known person in science ed, and she had this really famous book about elementary ed called Children's Ideas in Science, and we'll take a look at that a little bit. And then she thought, oh well, we left out the secondary people, so they made this book, which is not nearly as good. But I did photocopy the entire book, and you can download it. Sorry, Rosalind. But it does have, the nice thing is it's got chapters on like every subject matter where it looks at what's been published about what are kids' misconceptions on that subject, and so that's a very useful thing to have. And I didn't want to assign the whole book, because All right, cool. And then we're going to talk about communities of practice, apprenticeship, and fun stuff like that. All right. Oh, and so the other thing is that this other night, November the 11th, is also a holiday, so we're not going to have class that night either. We have a reading that week, but we're not going to have any actual assignment for that because you're already going to have plenty of assignments by then. And we also don't have class on Thanksgiving, so that means 3 weeks we're not coming in. And so we will go, I think, to the 16th week. So we'll pick up that one of those extra weeks there at the end, and we'll talk about stats in that last week and how we can run some statistics on our data in that last week. So 3 weeks off, 1 extra week tacked on at the end. So what is the math on that? So we're at 13 actual classes. Anyway, so because we have limited classes, we should get back to it. Any questions about the changes to syllabus? Oh, one other thing I had neglected when I made my syllabus originally in the first week to put the interview on there, so I added that as well. So if you look at the syllabus, which I know you all look at religiously, you'll notice that I actually added that, and so now we're up to 200 points total. Yeah, I don't know. Syllabuses are so much fun. Syllabi. All right, so full disclosure, we changed the syllabus, but I did say that I would reserve that right. Exactly. Okay, cool. So let's talk about the other thing we did this week besides Piaget is we looked at the website, and I got a little note when people edit the website. So there was a lot of this week, so that was great. Excellent. So it's I just in looking at it, I can tell that it's improved. Things are the links are all active, and they seem to, at least the ones I looked at, all look good. It's impossible to check everything because that's a lot of stuff to check, right? Cool.
Question?
Yeah.
Some of the ones I did didn't have an assessment boundary, so I just didn't put one in since there wasn't one. Sounds reasonable? All right,
Yes. I mean, unless you want to make one up.
cool. Yeah, I
Yeah.
don't know what one I make up.
Yeah. Under explanation, it actually uses
Mm-hmm.
let me use my language. I don't know what I'm trying to say. But the little things at the end where it's written in the red ink. So I was using those as the explanation. And I don't know if they decided and they were copying or
Okay,
it was
so-
something that they mistakenly.
So we're talking about some of the performance expectation pages, right? These ones here where they have a clarification statement and assessment boundary.
Right, so it's using, I think, the assessment about, it might have been using a clarification statement. It was using the clarification as the explanation.
Oh, okay, so somebody had copied this section here and put it down in their explanation.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if that was.
That is not what we want for the explanation. In fact, one of the things I wanted to do is to sort of brainstorm what would make sense for an explanation. How should we explain these things? Do we want to explain them in some way? And so hold that thought for a second. So in terms of the sort of the assignment, which was just to sort of clean up things, what were some of the things that you found that needed cleaning?
Well, I thought at first I was going well, and then I went to one, and for some reason, you know how sometimes you look at things and you don't see it. I'm like, this standard doesn't exist. I was getting all upset about it, and I'm like, okay, what went on? And then I went back, and I'm like, oh wait, I was the whole time. But anyway, so that was funny. But one thing I noticed was that the format was mostly the same on the ones we worked on them before, but not completely.
Mm-hmm.
But
Which one were you looking at?
I was doing for 7th grade the life science performance expectations.
Mm-hmm.
So I did all of those. So yeah, so that's
Cool.
kind of.
And so some of them were off.
That was the one that killed me originally, and I'm like, I cannot find it. That one, Alice 17.
Alice 17 doesn't exist.
But
No,
I found it.
the more you stare at these things, it kind of makes your head spin a little bit. So you have to do it in small doses.
Yeah, I have to go back to it.
Exactly.
Can you go backwards, right?
Mm-hmm. This is the 7th grade.
So I think that is, if you scroll back down, that in itself is not consistent with the 8th grade.
So we should have key topics, cross-cutting concepts, DCIs, and then performance expectations.
Is the entire sentence is a link, and at least in the 8th grade, it's set up where the like LS2-5 is a link, and then the sentence below it is not, and looks a little.
Right. Okay. So they linked the. Oh, and look, this is 2 different links. That's interesting.
I didn't change.
I hadn't noticed that one. So yeah. So here the whole sentence is a link, and which was the other one that's different?
8th grade is just.
8th grade. So we'll take a look at the 8th grade. So here we immediately see that these are not linked yet, right? So that's here, but that's not what you're talking about. You're talking about down below. So here we have a link with the title, and then the statement is kind of long. These are long ones, huh? Yeah. I don't know, which one do you like better? This is a little easier to see.
Right? I thought the other one was a little easier to see. This one looked more like the step above it. Was that you interview on that?
Yeah. you know, it's interesting. I mean, these are really long, and so if you tried to make the whole thing a link, that's a really long link. That seems kind of awkward. What are you gonna say?
Maybe there's a way to kind of put things in kind of boxes or cells more or less, so it looks a little bit more broken up. That's where you get into the P's. You can have it in a box.
You can make a table. Table is one of the options under on Google Sites. The table tool is a little clunky. Just
Or maybe
having
line
fought with it
breaks
for a
or-
while.
Page breaks.
Line breaks, yeah, we could put some things like that. Where would you, so how would we break it up here? So this is, this line here is the DCI, and then this is the performance expectation underneath it. Is that right? I think that's right. So we didn't, I don't think we did that on the other ones. Put the DCIs in LS3. Yeah.
What's your ultimate vision for how it's supposed to look? What do you guys, you know, what do you guys want to do? Like, why are we doing this?
Yeah, great question. That's exactly right. So we're doing this for you, right? So we're doing this because we think this will be a useful resource for teachers. And you all being teachers can help us with that into figuring out what's going to actually be useful for people who are starting to look at the NGSS and trying to figure out how to make a class out of this. And so there's a couple of things that I know are needed. At some point, we need descriptions of the high school classes, right? Instead of earth science, you know, physical science, life science, we need descriptions of actual courses and how those get broken down in a course, like we have for 6th, 7th, and 8th. Those are a little more, I think, finished. Yeah.
Kind of a side question, but last week we mentioned the California framework and that we might be able to like peek at it.
Yeah.
Can we peek at it?
Definitely. Yes, we've gotten approved to look at it. I'm told that the last version that was done in, I want to say June or something like that, we're allowed to see. So I'll post those up and we'll take a look. We'll spend some time looking at those so we can see how they look. Yeah.
Can you, I'm sorry, because I guess I think really. So can you like walk me through like, okay, so I'm a teacher, you know, I teach, you know, chemistry. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to this website. And I'm going to, you know, like, can you walk me through that thought process and on how your end goal is going to be for the user to use it? Because I think if I understood that, then I can better understand how to help. You know what I mean? Because it's like, okay, I'm a chemistry teacher. Okay, I want to do a lab. I'm supposed to cover blah, blah, blah. So I want to click on blah, blah, blah to get to blah, blah, blah. So this way I can finally get an experiment. You know what I mean? Like I'm trying to figure that out.
Right. So okay. So let's say I'm a new teacher. I get assigned to teach. Let's say I'm at a school that's going to do integrated high school science. Well, let's stick to middle school because that's easier. All right. So I'm assigned to do the integrated middle school 7th grade class, and I don't know anything about that. So I want to find out what I need to do. So I can click on here. What would be the first question that I have? Yeah, what's this about, right? I want to get things, and so here we have the key topics, ecosystem, natural resources, and structure and property matter. So that brings up a lot of ideas in my head, the things I might be teaching, but I need to know specifically what am I supposed to be doing, all right? So then I can go down more detailed and look at these, the DCIs. Now, okay, so if you're going to teach this class, where would you go to get started? Do you want to know what the DCIs are? Do you want to know the performance expectations? Maybe that's the... The testing is going to be important. So presumably the testing needs to follow this, right? You know, we're going to pay some company a lot of money to make up tests, and they're going to use this same list of topics. So that's the best thing we have to go on at this point, at least. But maybe it's looking at these performance expectations and trying to make them in. So the way that we're imagining this is that, okay, I know I need to teach life science, and I've got these, how many is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 life science performance expectations to do. So then I need some ideas for lesson plans, right? So then we would go in and say, oh, Well, okay, so I need to find out exactly what that performance expectation is, and here's the details. Got my clarification statement right there. And so now I want to know something about how to teach that. So this is where the brainstorming part comes in. What do you think would be good to have there? What sort of information would you like to see if you're going to have to teach some performance expectation? You got to get kids ready for that. Yeah.
So maybe like a lesson kind of intro, something to get you,
Mm-hmm.
get the kids going. Maybe you're going to just talk about maybe a primer lesson before actually diving into instruction. Maybe describe an event or a scaffolding plan, or a quick writing. Just like a launching activity more or less.
One of the things that our district is focusing on is essential questions too. So maybe just having like a list of like, here are your essential questions that you can put on your board.
Essential questions. I like that.
It's still like
Include
two
that
hours.
instruction
Really,
as a
that's
whole point of
one
view.
word. Yeah, it's our rotation. Which one are you gonna do? Assessments? Or are you gonna do
It's like a learning objective question. It's trying to build
So the first one was descriptive events.
Like a lesson intro. So maybe have a few just
We always like QPP.
And then,
QP.
What did you call them? Key questions? Essential questions.
It's just like a very broad, overarching question that doesn't necessarily have the right answer. But one that you would expect a single answer from.
Okay, I like that. Something that could be brought up again and again.
Yeah.
Rep and event. All right. Yeah.
And T.
A and T. Thank you. Sorry, did you have one? No? Jennifer?
No, I think I understand what you want us to do. You want us to collaborate to build this into something that's usable. But I'm really, really confused about the formatting, what is expected formatting in each page, because I feel like we're just popping in and just splat ideas without any type of coherent structure, and I get a little bit uncomfortable with just contributing something without knowing what is this. I want to contribute, but in a structured manner. So I guess I'm asking, I don't know how to, it's just organizations. Should we just go by like looking at grade 1, 2, 3, the lesson?
So you're talking about the assignment that we talked about last week, or the next assignment, which I haven't given you
I
yet?
think Dr. Harris did something too. Last week.
With this site?
If you did, I missed it.
I'm not sure he's aware of the site. I showed it to him a couple times. But yes, once it's great, then we'll wow it.
So I guess like if I go to grade 1, key topics, cross concepts, DCI summary, it doesn't look like the same format as.
Well, we were modeling off of, what was it, grade 6 LS
Yeah.
1.2?
So yeah, there's a lot of discontinuity in the site currently. People didn't follow the guidelines when they created their stuff. That was our assignment from last week, which was trying to clean up what was there, and that was easier said than done, right?
Yeah.
Some of it needed a lot of work. Yeah.
So, but even like what you just showed us, doesn't look like, they're not all the same.
Yep.
But, our group was 6th grade, and so we made it a certain way.
Mhm.
The DCI is a certain way, and what I'm seeing is different. So I guess, I like, consistency.
Well, yeah, I'm for consistency. Although I don't let it slow me down too much if things are a little bit different. The key thing is that we get the information there, and yes, the leaks look different currently, and the formatting is a little off. But I think we can fix that. Right? Yeah, so I'm confident that we'll get that all worked out. But the key thing I think that we can provide, being expert science teachers, is that content and figuring out that thing too. So I don't want to get too hung up on formatting stuff.
Yeah. So the performance expectation is based on a standard, right? Is that my correct understanding? Because like, for instance, if you were a teacher in the old school way,
I mean,
you would say.
the right answer to that is no. You're not supposed to say that that's the standard.
Right. To help, I'm like, I got an idea that I think might benefit. If it doesn't go well, I at least want to make sure I'm on the right track. So in the old days, you would go to the standards, like the no. So if you wanted to
Students will
teach,
know.
8th grade, whatever, you go to the 8th grade framework, and then literally, if you could create a checklist and check. You're good, right?
Mhm.
Right, that's the old school. So new
Right.
school, so I'm gonna teach grade 7 performance expectations. That's
Mhm.
basically the big picture. That's the standard, right?
Yeah, kind of. I mean, the people who made the standards go out of their way to say, no, that's not the standard. That the whole thing is the expectations of what students will be able to do. It's not something that you can easily check off. They're trying to make it hard for you to do that check off thing.
Well,
Performance expectations are the closest you would come to having a standard, right? Like the performance expectations kind of.
I don't want to get semantics, but yeah, like just to say, like, because the next thought would be, okay, if the DCIs, because the way I'm looking at grade 7, you have life science, earth space science, physical science.
Right.
So ultimately, it doesn't matter from a pedagogical perspective. If we're both 7th grade teachers, you can start with life science, I can start with physical science, because they're each their own little entity, they have their little DCIs.
Right.
But if I followed the DCIs with a regimen, then I would be able to teach my physical science, you would be able to teach your life science, a relative time. We're just looking at the process here. And if I went through you went through your little LS checklist, and I went through my little, my PS checklist, then I can advance. So the DCIs are basically, like little sub checklists, if you will, to the PEs, correct?
Mm. Now, you could do it that way. That's certainly a way that it could work. It's not exactly intended that way, and part of the reason is if you look at some of the way the PEs are written, they're very specific, right? You don't want to just do the PEs, right? That by itself would be kind of a weird class, I think. Because construct an argument supported by empirical evidence that changes in physical and biological components of an ecosystem affect populations. If you just did that without talking about other stuff about populations and ecosystems, it would be weird.
Well, yeah, that's my question. So here's the river delta, so to speak. This is where it ends. So the question is, do we, as a cohort, come up with a way to pedagogically, soundly say, okay, we're gonna take the life sciences, we're gonna take the earth sciences, we're gonna take the physical sciences, and we're gonna streamline that in terms of, okay, hey, like if they understand this, it doesn't matter if it's life science or earth science or physical science, but this LS16 will set up to this ES2, which will then lead to a PS1, and then if we give that framework, then you can get a brand new teacher that was just, forced to, let's just say they're teaching ICS, they graduate biology, they're hoping, but they need a job to support their family. They say, what am I gonna do? And then they come out and they're like, okay, like I'm gonna teach 7th grade. Here is a pedagogical outline that is, obviously you can go whichever way you want, but if you follow the CSUN badass cohort Wednesday night recipe,
yes,
you will actually do well teaching. You just need to teach.
Yes.
Because then
that is what we want. I agree.
We should break down life science. If you look at this, if you look at the performance expectation, if it's not going to be broken down into life science, like you're going to teach life science, and I'm going to teach earth science, and then eventually we can do whatever. They have those 4 things, but why would you break them up into those 4 things from a pedagogical standpoint? Like it's just a reference. They can go to the NGSS website for that. So we should, if we're not going to say, okay, you just teach that, and I'll teach this, and then eventually we'll get to that. If that's not the goal, then they shouldn't be broken up.
That is exactly right, right? So the information that's on there now is available in other places in lots of different formats. What we need to do is then add on to that the information about how to actually teach it, right? That's where we want to add, and why everybody's going to come to our site instead of all those other sites, right? Because we're going to have that extra stuff. Yeah.
One thing that I think might be neat is as we're adding lessons on the bottom, one lesson doesn't necessarily just cover one little thing. It can cover, like multiple things can be incorporated into one lesson. So it'd be neat if the lessons, actually when you click on a lesson, it wasn't just a link to a document that pops open, but if it was a link to a page for that lesson. So let's say lesson A, So you click on it, lesson A opens up, but then lesson A is then also on this thing and this one and this one, so that way, and then on that page for the lesson, it's listed all the things it incorporates, that then links back to that DCI, so it's a lot of linking back and forth, but where they kind of cross, so that way when I'm teaching, when I'm like, oh, this is a neat lab, and then I can see that it covers all these different.
So instead of a lesson relating to a specific PE, it could hit on several. Is that where you're going?
Yeah, so then it would have
I like
a
that.
page for itself, so that way you can link all the PEs to it and it to all the PEs.
All right.
But I think that's a brilliant idea. And then also something that really helps is seeing a lesson or seeing how you would introduce something. I know that in Harris class we're doing our disruptive events and we have to make a video of it. So would that be something that we could include, like for the disruptive event part or for the intro part? Like how do you in an NGSS way, how do you introduce it or something like that? And then just like maybe like a 5-minute video clip of like teacher to teacher, like this is how you would do it. Is that, because I feel like when you look at a document, it's like, well, that's nice. But
Sometimes it's scary.
it's scary, yeah. And then you have to read it over and over again. But if you see somebody do it, then you're like, oh, that's how it's done.
Video guides. I like that.
I think the really difficult part about this with NGSS is every teacher has to create their own storyline that makes sense and that provides this whole framework and this whole story. But so right now we've taken apart this big body of knowledge and sort of scattered it all on different pages. We get to build the whole web back together. So all our different content areas are actually trying to build the whole storyline of the class. It's really amazing just the freedom of the way that we have, like, well, which concept do you start with and how do you build up to that? And so like a lot of the teachers, the chem and bio assignment can be like 3-week actual instructional sequences where you present the students with a phenomenon, they get questions, they're doing like a whole 5E lesson method because it has to be inquiry based. And if you're looking at it as a bunch of checkboxes to look off of, you're missing the whole kind of overarching point of it. But seeing the interconnectedness of it, I think is I think somehow we can get that across the website, or like little highlights of the lesson, like, well, how can you go from the lab to connect it back to the other material?
Right. Yeah, and also this, because of the way the sort of freedom that you talk about, it allows you to sort of go into more depth on some interesting topic that's going to get the kids excited, as long as you can incorporate several PEs into that, right? So you can do some really interesting activities.
I probably misunderstanding this, but are we basically trying to build like a curriculum?
Yeah, but we don't have to build it all ourselves. We're gonna share the load, right?
No, it sounds like that. I mean, and with that, it really shouldn't be just a lesson here that's disjointed from this lesson. It should all kind of all go together and be nice and sequential and so forth.
It's actually a really good thought, is because it could be easier to design the structure and then start working and fitting in
It
lessons.
doesn't make sense to me.
Because otherwise it's too like, how is that gonna,
I don't understand like navigation, it's gonna be very bizarre.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. Do you want to get the big picture of your course first and then work the lessons, or do you want to have a standalone lesson that can get plugged in different places? Interesting question. I know Gloria wants to talk. All right, go ahead.
It sounds like you're going back to standard, like standardization of this content when it's trying to get away from that. So I like the idea of putting lessons because as a teacher, I would like to see lessons and see how I can incorporate it and then put my creativity into how I'm gonna do that. But if I have this whole outline and then now we're telling them how to teach it, then it goes back to what we're trying to get away from.
But as like samples, maybe not the whole curriculum, but saying like this is an instructional sequence, then you can kind of just tweak it as.
Then you put in what you want to do.
Right. Well, I mean, of course, different teachers are different places, right? If you're feeling really unsure of yourself and you don't know this field very well, then you really want somebody to tell me, here's a sequence. Whereas, you've been doing this for a while, you know your science, and you're like, oh, I'm going to make my own up. So it's all good, right?
And I think there's also something to the whole reason I came back to school again is because of NGSS and all of this stuff, and Common Core kept talking about it, and I was like, I don't know what the hell this is, and all the new teachers are coming in with this training and I'm like, I'm supposed to incorporate this and I have no training and I have no PDs and I don't know anything about it. So to have a place where I can go where people who are not going through this process can go and get that information, and it's kind of comforting to know that it's not this much.
And one of the things that I think is good about us doing it is that we're not the state. We're not Pearson. We don't have this underlying sort of plan that we're trying to subvert people to or get people to buy our stuff. We're saying this is very open source. This is very internet. We're just gonna all create something and add different ideas and then try to come up with something that's sort of somewhat coherent and useful and keep tweaking it until it becomes a really valuable thing.
Yeah, I was thinking because I'm really taking what everyone's saying, and it's like I think if we did, posing this as a possibility, if we looked at, because teachers want the freedom to be able to teach what they want, like obviously if I want to teach AB, as long as kids know A through Z, it doesn't matter if I go A B C or if I go to G and X Y Z. I mean, at the end of the day, that's kind of start time and end time. But in terms of like the life science, the earth science, I think if we gave them, because you have to figure, okay, if we're doing this for like new teachers want to figure out, I think it has to be like there's a duality there, kind of light almost. It's like, okay, I love the idea of setting up lesson plans that can plug into a bunch of things. So you or not lesson plan, but like a lattice or a lesson that I guess it is lesson plan that will work for this DCI with this topic in 7th grade, 8th grade, whatever. You can dumb it down. You can work. That's the cool part about teaching. But I think that if we did it on a concept, like if we looked at earth and space science, even though like some of that stuff might apply like other places at other grade levels, if we said, if we created like A, B, and C ways to teach it, because if I say, okay, I think this is the best way to teach something, someone's clearly going to disagree. But if we came up with the 3 best ways, the sequencing, I realize a checklist may not be the best, word to use. Not that I don't teach that way, but the sequencing, that's a better word, a nicer word to use. Let's come up with 3 different sequences to be able to say, okay, if I'm a teacher and I can read these 3 options or just 2, then okay, I like the way this flows, give them a choice, then at least they have something to go with. And then what happens is you can link to whoever's idea, Gloria, those experiments. But then if you're just like, you're totally overwhelmed, you could go to those experiments, which will ultimately link back. So I think if we did both of those, it answers the question. Because I think differently, like a more linear kind of fashion, where some people want to have the freedom to bounce back and forth. And if we did both, now you're helping out the teacher. All
right, that is an interesting point. So how many people would prefer to work on sort of the big picture for a course, the sort of the flow of ideas across a course, versus getting more detailed about an individual lesson? Who's more interested in working on course level type stuff? And who's more interested in lessons and the smaller level? Interesting. All right. Yeah, I think we can do both. I think we can divide and conquer. And really, at this point, we just want to make some good examples, and then future students can take the baton and run with it. And we'll be building this out as we go. Cool. So as long as we set up a good foundation with these ideas, as long as they're badass, right? That's what's key. Okay. If you did not get a chance to edit the site and do some work on it this week, then please do some next week. There's a few things that are sort of obvious that we need to fix on here, like the ones where we're missing links. Like on here on grade 8, we're missing a lot of links on there. To the extent that we can standardize these things, I think we like this model. I like that model. I think that looks nice. That'd be good. What should we do with say, for example, this one? This one is really different. So these are all PEs, is that right? Or are those all DCIs? What are we linking here to? Yeah. All right. Cool. All right. So this one needs a lot of work. This high school physical science. So how many people still need to do some time on this? By the way, so you know about the whole history thing, right? So I just go in the history and check off everybody who did stuff. Make sure you all get credit for it. I'm not interested in grading how much you did, just that you were contributing.
Yeah, so, okay, so I'm on that page and I click on the PS1-1.
Yep.
Okay? And I see this very sparse kind of page. PS1-1, okay.
Right.
That's all we're doing for now.
Mhm.
But then if you click on it.
So what's wrong with this page? What do we need to fix here?
Separate out assessment boundary, grades online.
Yeah, we want to separate this part out. We said to separate that. The title of the page way too long. That's not good. All right. Is this the right? Is that even the right? PS-1 is not correct, right? That's not the PE code. It's like 1 dot something, right? That doesn't seem long enough.
Is that the?
PS1-1. So it's high school PS1-1. Maybe that is right.
Yeah, they just have the dash.
So these ones are, they just didn't put the high school in there. Yeah, okay. Yes, okay. Okay, yeah, so that is correct. Okay. Yeah, so but then there's nothing sort of at the top like the big topics and things like that. I mean, I guess the topics are these red.
Right.
Do you want me to make that my thing? Make that one.
Yeah, the high school ones are kind of tricky because we're not sure how we're gonna go about them yet. And once we look at the frameworks, we'll have a better sense of it. And so then we can do that some more. So I don't want to give any new assignments this week. If you didn't get a chance to do the cleanup that we did last week, then take some time and do some cleaning. But we're not gonna do any explanations or lessons yet. We're gonna hold off on that.
So if I'm working on the physical, because Catherine and I were designing the physical science.
Uh-huh. Right.
And I'm just confused, like, I don't wanna mess up something, like.
Well, I mean, one thing that's needed here is we need to put the DCIs in, right? So there's no DCIs on right now. So we need to do a listing of the DCIs. And then I think
Under the PS1-1, there's DCI. Underneath that, DCI.
yeah, right. But we were putting that. Also, do you notice this other thing? Is that all these links open up new tabs? So I like new tabs if it's a different website. If I'm in the same website, I want just the same tab. Does that make sense?
Well, if you like going back and forth between the two tabs.
So when you go to create a link, so I'm gonna go here into edit mode. Am I logged in here? All right. So if you go to edit mode and you go to click on the link, you see the link is here, and I can click the change button. That allows me to edit the link, right? And all I need to do is uncheck this, right? And so everything that's within the site should always be unchecked. If you link to something that's at a different site, that button should be checked. Does that make sense? Do you understand the logic of that? Yeah.
I'll personally go through and make sure.
There's a lot of links. I don't know if you can get them all.
Well,
You could do them while you're watching TV or something, right? It's pretty easy to do. This isn't brain surgery. Is that sorry? Was that what you were saying?
Yeah, I was just gonna volunteer to do the groundwork. It's gotta be.
So you're volunteering for which page? You want
Well,
this?
I was gonna do as many as possible.
Jennifer's working on this page.
Again, I'm sorry, I'm just very unclear what exactly you expect us to do for, like, because I look at this, if you click under PS1-1, you're telling us to untab that.
Right. So the place that you do that though is on this page.
Right. Then you should copy everything on PS-1, and if you click on that.
Just edit it.
So if you go to edit mode, and then you can click on it, and then you can do the change, and you have to go down to all these links.
Okay. And then after that, you unlink everything. Then
You're not
unlinking.
Don't unlink it.
So it's not gonna open it.
Oh, okay.
Just unchecking this little thing.
Okay. Then at the HSPS1 let's just go there.
Yeah.
Because I do want to do work, but I just don't want to do something that's not correct. So.
Well, we can always fix anything.
Well, then why should you do it right 2 times if you do it right the first time? PS-1-1, okay?
Yeah.
All right, so here that is. You want us to work on the DCI. So the DCI right there.
Not here.
Not here.
No.
Okay. So that, when you click on.
Here's what
that-
I would do here.
Okay.
See this? I would just copy all. This stuff is here in the title, and we don't want that. What we want is for that to be here, like that. Right? Because putting it in the title means it's like all up here and it's way too long.
Correct.
All right, so now I've got it here, and then I come down here and I that. Now I'm looking good. That seems about right. What am I missing?
One thing is that some of them are using like bright red and some of them are using burgundy, and I wasn't sure if you wanted to use red, you wanted to.
All right, do we have a preference of bright
I
red?
don't think we would change.
Bright red seems too alarming. Isn't that bad?
Danger too.
Danger, danger. Wear this. I don't know. See that's much nicer now.
So was that yes
See?
and bright red?
See how nice that looks now? It's all clean. See, I mean, it's real little things like that. Just little.
Alright, and then,
And so we've changed PS1, so now we have a model.
okay, good. And then if you click on the DCI,
Yeah, where does that go? Oh, it goes here. Okay.
what is, where that, what is that?
So that was something we made 2 years ago. We built up all the DCIs and we made them as separate pages, so they're all underneath this link here. Right? And so we're able to link from the performance expectation to the DCI and back and, well, not back yet, but maybe someday. Keep going.
Would you be able to, we worked on the 6th grade, which was pretty good to start with, but would you be able to just click on,
We're going to change that picture, right?
I think it's already gone.
Oh, good.
Someone, it's gone. Thank you very much. If you can look at any of the 6th grade, because we tried to format it all the same under the performance expectations. Because we did something different with the DCIs, I think we understood it, but let us know if,
With the DCIs on here?
see, below DCIs.
Oh, I see what you did. You copied the text of the
We looked
DCI.
at all the DCIs for that performance expectation, and we copied all the ones that reference that particular performance expectation. Does that make sense? Because it says
Yeah.
MS 1-1, so we got all that said MS 1-1, and we pasted it there.
Gotcha.
That's what we thought
I-
we had to do.
Does that seem useful? Is that a useful thing to put there, or do we want other?
Just clicking on a DCI link and
Yeah.
seeing a bunch of DCI, I don't know, that's not really, yeah.
Yeah, that's not ideal. I'm with you on that. This gives you information.
It's all consolidated. Before, there was what you were looking for, plus other ones that weren't. So we just took just those ones.
Okay, well, considering that there are hundreds of these, I don't want to say go do it on all of them just yet.
Well, we did it for all of this grade.
You did it all for 6.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's all done.
All right. Well, let's leave it for now and see if we like it. We'll sort of try it out for a little bit. See what we think. Okay.
Yeah, we did the earth science.
And did you do it different?
A little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's hard to keep straight. So the list of the subjects, those are all what? Those are all performance expectations? Okay. And so those are also down here. Yep. It's pretty similar, right? Okay.
I don't know if your high school physical science matter and its interactions have all been linked to a new tab, right? So
Oh,
very
yeah.
exciting.
So fast.
We are
Awesome.
making progress.
Excellent. All right, very good. Okay, I wanna kind of wrap up here. All right, so nothing new to do here, but if you haven't had a chance to go in and clean and there's just a lot of things that need fixing. Just take a look at the examples that look good and copy those. That's mainly my advice.
How do you like that?
I'm not loving the list of subjects, to be honest with you.
I think
That's not, I mean, a long list of numbers,
Just a recap.
I mean, because it's farther down already,
Yeah.
so I'm not sure it adds
I think
to
that was
it.
there to begin with, and then Teresa put in.
Yeah, let's blame the other class. It was all
Yeah,
their fault. Totally.
They're not here.
Is it a subject list?
So as much as everyone's freaking out about the format, and not that I can like do everything, but my elective is to work on this and make it one format. So as long as you
There's
kind
that
of
bright
follow
red.
what we talked about on last week with it being grade 7 and that specific one, then I'm gonna go through and like try to make it more homogeneous. So don't like stress out about, oh, this looks yuck and it's all different font sizes and different formats on each page, because I'm gonna be going through and trying to correct it. Obviously, I want you guys to like, as much as possible, correct it too, so that it's not, because nobody can do the entire site in one semester, but like, don't stress out so much.
Well, I mean, but does that mean that I should just let everything?
No, that means,
No,
if you put in all the content, then I can separate these and make it all look the same. So you don't need to worry, if you make all of yours the same, then I can go through and like tweak it to make it
Look like everybody else's.
like everybody else's. But if all of yours are different, different everythings, and you go back and do your own thing, then obviously it'll take forever. But my point is, don't yeah, that's what we were talking about. I was like, I can do that.
All right. We're still going. I think we're good. Okay, so let me just talk about the thing that we didn't get to do tonight, which is my lecture. Well, you're all safe from that. At least till next week. So at some point we'll talk about this. I tried to boil down several hundred years of psychology into a 30-minute lecture, but I always fail. It ends up going long, so we don't have anywhere near enough time for that tonight. Now, in terms of the reading for this week, so I put these 2 papers up here, and both are, let's just say, challenging. This first one here, it's by Alan Collins and Diedrich Entner, and Alan Collins is a great guy, does fascinating science side stuff, and this is a really good paper. This is a terrible copy. This is the only copy that seems to exist on the internet. It's posted at like 5 different universities. If you go to Google Scholar, you all know Google Scholar, right? It's the same copy shows up to, all right, so somebody just needs to print out the stupid thing and make a decent photocopy of it. It is a great paper. I really love this paper, but it's long. Look how long it is. But it's got a lot of pictures. I mean, so this is cool. The topic is, and it would be much better if I'd done my lecture because this would make more sense. But so it's this idea of mental models, right? So one of the ways that we think people think is that people create models in their head, right? And I can demonstrate this to you in just a minute. Imagine you are in a spaceship and you are now hovering above the Earth, above the North Pole. And as you look down on the Earth, which way is the Earth turning? Is it clockwise or counterclockwise? Just hold that thought for a minute. Unless you had a question about the question.
No.
You had an answer? All right, hold on thought. See, let's see if people can figure out the question. Is it clockwise?
Wait, North Pole or South?
You're on the North Pole. Good question. You have a 50% chance of getting it right, at least. Or maybe better. All right, how many people think they know the answer? Oh, are you good? I'm surprised. I didn't see a lot of people doing this. Usually you get a lot of this. All right, so tell us who wants to volunteer their explanation.
Stephen.
All right, no, come on. We can't make Stephen go first every time. Here, somebody else step up here. Chris?
Okay, so my thought is that, I mean, this is not what actually is happening, but we think the sun going from east to west. What's actually happening with the Earth is spinning in the direction, right? So
Right.
if the sun is here and the Earth is here, and we're looking down on it, that means the sun would be going sort of almost around us.
See, now you're doing the thing
Now
with
I'm
your
doing it.
hands. All right, good. Yeah, yeah. Help them out.
Or if I could figure, you do the sun. Okay. And we're looking at that would be that's
Excellent, son.
that's my North Pole. Here's like my West Coast and my East Coast.
I'm gonna turn the camera over there.
So the sun is here, going from my East Coast towards my West Coast, correct? So if I'm on top looking down, am I turning? Right?
Counterclockwise.
Clockwise. What do you think?
Sounds reasonable.
It's a right
That's
answer,
good?
I love it.
Do you agree?
I agree with him.
Uh-huh.
I was imagining saying above, and this was my son, I did not have you there. And I know that it rises in the east, and so it's spinning this way. It's east coast to west coast, and so I'm kind of imagining which way it's rotating. So,
Did everybody have a visualization in their head of the Earth, and did you animate it?
I did, I imagine it maybe was like dramatic, it was doing like a day change, like the Earth spinning.
So you're
like,
running
light up.
some kind of a mental simulation in your head. Your brain is simulating the Earth's movement.
Does it matter if you're
Except for
upside
Tova.
down or not?
What's
Do you
that?
think when a rocket like launches up and you're above Earth looking down at the North Pole, it's like you're assuming like you're looking at that, like would it matter if you're upside down?
You still have to
You
look
would
at
look
space.
I don't think so. All right, but the point was that your brain is able to create this simulation of things that are going on. This is a very powerful tool, and there's people that argue that this is the primary way that we think, that we're creating these mental simulations all the time, and that we're constantly have this simulation of the world, and then when something happens that doesn't match our simulation, then we start paying attention because something was wrong with the simulation that we have running in our head. So this is an important thing, and it's an important thing for how people understand stuff. So this paper is all about how do people construct these things? What are the building blocks of a mental simulation? What do you need in your brain to make the simulation run right? And as I was saying, it's a fascinating paper. The focus is eventually on boiling water. What is boiling water? And so you can see some of the models that people are talking about, how boiling works. And but like I said, it's really long. How many pages is it? It's like, 22 pages. Then you get to the references, stuff like that. So that's long and it's dense. The other paper, and you get to choose one. Don't read them both. The other one has a great title, which I really love this title. What teachers of science need to know about models? That sounds really cool. Also pretty long, but probably easier to read, less pictures. All right, so you don't get as many pictures on this one. So anyway, all right, do we have some volunteers who can lead these papers? Are you particularly inspired to look at one of these? Mark, what would you like? You like the boiling water? Okay, so we have the boiling water spoken for. Who would like the other one? I see several hands. Who was first? Teresa, was your hand up first? Okay, so you're going to look at the what teachers need to know about models. All right, so everybody's going to pick one of them to read. There is a discussion question as well. So and we'll squeeze in that lecture at some point or other. All right. I didn't leave nearly as much time as I thought I would, but I will hang around and be able to answer questions about action research and stuff. And the pizza smells really good. So I'm just gonna leave it at that. Cool. And do be thinking about your interviews. And you can even do an interview if you're all motivated to go that fast and get started. We'll talk about it more next week. Yes.
So moving forward, should I just dig in somewhere and start doing stuff? Like how are we evaluating, I guess, what I've
So yeah, I think we continue to sort of make one that looks really good, and then say, how about this? Go ahead and go with that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So like the 6th grade one that we were looking at has like fonts that kind of like it'll be a tiny font and then the stuff under it is bigger. So if I just start off by like making them
that
all
look
where the
nice.
headings are bigger and the other ones maybe a different color so they stand out and kind of go with that.
Okay.
And then I wasn't sure like Do we want pictures in there? Because there are like some pictures or animations. Was that something you wanted in there? I
I
wasn't
feel
sure
like
about.
if there's no pictures, it's like really boring looking.
Okay, so should I?
Just
I mean, do I
enough
want
to
to look
keep
for
it
like
interesting.
free clip art, right? I mean, is there an issue of me stealing clip art off the internet?
Oh, yeah, I do that all the time.
I just wasn't sure if we're trying to make this a thing that people go to. If we want to make sure that it's free clip art.
Let's not worry about that yet. We'll worry about that later.
Okay, so I'll just worry about the font.
Yeah. For now, we're just gonna make it look easy to read. Yeah, I like that page. Of course, it depends on what size font you're at. But much better like this than it is like that. But yeah.
Yeah, because like here, where to go? If you keep scrolling down.
Yeah, and like these tables of contents are nice, but they shouldn't be with a picture. I don't know.
Yeah, I agree. But if you scroll down, like
Yeah, and
like
somebody
things
stuck
get
this
bigger
in.
and
Somebody just
smaller.
made
Okay,
this
so
up.
I wasn't sure if that needed to be in there.
Maybe we'll link that somewhere else.
And like if this was maybe over to here, because I don't know, I feel like it's harder to view it from where it
Doesn't
is.
look centered, is that what you're saying?
Yeah. And then the 8th grade one I liked better where it was this, and then under it was this indent, where this was the whole line. So it would say like MSLS 1-1, and then that stuff underneath it.
Okay.
Okay,
I'll do that.
We're gonna.
You were having yogurt parfaits.
Oh, wow.
Ice cream sundaes.
Oh, nice. Yeah. I like it. I like where your head's at. I like where your head's at. Where's the forks, though, ladies? The forks.
For salad.
Ooh.
There's not room.
Customer service.
I'm sorry.
Doc.
I thought I had everything.
I'm still seeing lights from the blue light that was like,
They're in the other room where I left them.
it's awesome.
We're getting forks. There's spoons over here though. For the I don't know why I thought. There's plates in there. Of course. Yay! Thank you.
Did everybody get first?
Alright. Get up there and get first. Steven's going in for second. Seriously. Buffet pizza. Because Steven's gonna eat it all.
Seriously, bro? Straight cheese? No way. You have a complex mind and a simple palate? You have a complex mind and a simple palate?
I had veggie for lunch from mixed with
I bet you a barbecue chicken out of here. I want to talk about peanut and other things. I'm going for it.
Oh.
You know, it's a funny that
That's gonna be like
You have like all these forks. And you're like,
You would be in a box of forks.
Oh, wow.
It's a yogurt. That's dessert.
Like it's just
Thank you for bringing it.
yeah, we won last year. Boom. Got one the first one.
I barely had lunch.
It's one of those days, you know what you made
thought we were running a play. One guy, I'm enough of a smart aleck kind of kid.
Oh, what do you have there?
So like, you tell him, take the knee. Take the knee. Okay, so he took the first step not to take the knee.
There's I'm like, it's the word for it to be introduced. I forgot how to talk.
He wasn't like, I was like explaining to myself. All that dealt with the crazy.
So we supposed to drop me, but there was ended up being extra.
He didn't take the knee right away, so he stood up and then waited. So he stood up to let someone walk and then take the knee. Take the 6 steps back, not just stand there. So at first I was like, it's like, it's like, that's why he takes steps back. So he stood up and he never done it. So it's like, quasi on the judge,
Okay.
So, our first game was
I didn't know if there was
so hungry. I was so hungry.
Every time I'm getting
Take your shirt off. And then she was like, did you want to do the water? And I was like, oh, like 60 bucks. I was like, no, yeah. I was like, no, this is So then she's like, okay, now we just have to But my boss wouldn't tell her why she was being on the nose. She was like, oh, this is
Catherine, was this a medium or large? Catherine, was this a medium or large?
These are large. But that's a medium size from like John.
Just curious, yeah, right? It's not a different size.
Yeah, these are like 12 inches, 14. Yeah, like 14. What's that one? This one is from Hawaiian. Not one that's spicy Italian pizza.
Would you ever notice?
Yeah. Instead of asking, he's like, hey, I can't figure out how to open it. Instead of saying, hey, I can't figure out how to open it, or asking the other teachers already taught it how to help her. She, like, even though I told her twice, sitting down there, she was like, so she didn't. So she skipped all the lessons and just went all over it. She was supposed to do it with a gizmo. So she gave them vocab homework, class work for a 2-hour block, and then gave them gizmos to do at home. And they didn't even have, they don't have an account. They don't have student account. So she's like, go do it at home. They had no way to log in. So they had a 5-minute trial period to do a gizmo that takes them and they're all freaking out. Well, so now I'm back and then I'll be on in May, which is really exciting.
Yeah.
And we just save it for something. And look was yogurt. If you guys didn't notice the yogurt and the fresh fruit, there's lots of it.
Okay, we have to stop this conversation.
So it's, that's why you have to.
I only
Where are those things? Strawberry. I did.
Yeah, because I'm 18
And when you express you have to be best. I like to be good at what I do.
Maybe after this year, you know, with the masters.
Strawberry.
let's start doing it.
Like, we're gonna do some steps back. I was like, I wanna hear, I'm reading this one.
I know, but the thing is, I
It's like,
see
where did I get this one? And I was like, oh, really?
It's SDI program, and they get it for professional jobs, and there's some, maybe they don't have this one.
Yummy. Yummy yogurt and fruit, everybody come eat those.
It's good for you.